When you watch the news, they not only report what is occurring, but they invite guests or have ordinary people speak their beliefs about a topic. Sometimes those people are just so passionate about their topic that they say profane or even heinous stuff that targets a certain group of people. And they believe they can say this because of the freedom of speech. The freedom of speech's intention was to allow citizens to speak their thoughts on the country and its leaders without having to worry about being punished for it. Because of this, the Supreme Court has put certain restrictions on the freedom of speech to try and force American citizens to really watch what they say. This has caused great debate over whether the freedom of speech should be limited or not. I argue that the freedom of speech should be limited and has good reasons why the Supreme Court even put them in place. I also argue that there should be even more limitations put in place as social media has now become a huge news source to a lot of people in America. Fighting words is one of the major limitations when it comes to freedom of speech and is often ignored because not a lot of people know about this limitation. Fighting words should continue to be a limitation as it can cause more violence and hate crimes if without it. According to the court case, Chaplinsky versus New Hampshire, court ruled in a unanimous vote that Chaplinsky's insults were fighting words and caused direct harm to the people he was saying it to and could cause the peace in the town to be disturbed. While Chaplinsky was convicted of this crime because he was calling the town a goddamn racketeer and a damn fascist, this is not the most common form of fighting words in today's age anymore. In today's age, some of the most common forms of fighting words include attacking other people based on their political beliefs or even the opposing stance on the Black rights movement. In today's age, there are a lot of reasons why this limitation should stay in place and should possibly be enforced in certain exchanging of words when it comes to topics that have a lot of debate. Another limitation that is just as important as the last one is defamation, which is where a false statement is said that can damage a person's reputation. Defamation is a limitation that is enforced on news sources such as newspapers and news networks where they cannot report anything that is false to allow the public to sway one side or the other. Now, according to the court case, the New York Times versus L.B. Sullivan sent a request to the New York Times asking them to retract information from one of their published papers that had multiple factual inaccuracies when it came to MLK on perjury charges. Sullivan felt that this defamed the credit of his subordinates and should be removed from the paper because of the false information. He argued that the paper published libelous material. However, the Supreme Court case ruled in favor of the Times because the newspaper did not act with the intention to harm the public officials. And the newspaper did not have the knowledge that the information they had received was false with the intention to purposely harm the public officials' reputations. However, this goes to show that even though the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the newspaper, if you know what you're saying or writing is false and intended to harm the person's reputation, you can get convicted of this crime. These are just some of the few limitations that are put into place when it comes to the freedom of speech. However, I argue that there should be even more limitations put into place because of today's age. In today's era, social media has become a news publishing source, whether they like to admit it or not. Now, according to Pew Research Center, social media sites have surpassed print newspapers as a news source for Americans. It is also the highest percentage of how people get their news information when it comes to age groups 18 to 29. Now, this information shows that social media is steadily becoming a huge way for people to get their news information and is looking to surpass other forms of how people get their news. According to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. Now, this basically means that websites that rely on user-generated content, such as Facebook and Twitter, cannot be treated as publishers, such as the New York Times and Time Magazine. This allows them to escape from any lawsuits that you see from their platforms because they are not the ones that are liable for every tweet and post. Section 230 allows these website platforms to moderate content however they want. They can arrange these different news sources or information posted by users however they want when you're trying to find certain information such as election information or coronavirus news updates. For example, there was a conspiracy video that was posted on YouTube.com in the style of a documentary where they filled the video with medical misinformation about where the virus came from and how it was transmitted. This video was viewed by over 200,000 people before being taken down. However, as any social media source, if it is retweeted, more and more people post it on other social media sites, this false information can spread like wildfire. Therefore, I believe that social media sites should also be restricted in what they can and can't allow being posted on their websites. I think this limitation can avoid the spread of false misinformation and even violent death threats that people receive through social media. These are the reasons why fighting words and defamation should continue to be limited by the law, and why social media should also have limits in what they can allow being posted. The freedom of speech was intended for good purposes, but has turned into something different. The limitations on the freedom of speech, such as fighting words and defamation, should continue to be limited, and social media and web-based platforms that spread the news should also be limited as time goes on. While the freedom of speech is a great way for people to speak their minds, it has become more of a monster than what our founding fathers had intended them to be.